What does it mean to be an American? In my eyes, to be an American, you need to be courageous. Courage means to have the ability to do something that frightens one, or to have strength in the face of fear or grief. Paul Revere, Dred Scott, Boo Radley, and Antonia are to me some of the most courageous people in American history and a few of the most courageous characters from American literature. Paul Revere was born in the December of 1734, the son of a French immigrant and a local artisan. He grew up in a large family and learned his trade of being a silversmith and goldsmith from his father. When Revere was 19, his father died, which was just about the time when he was finishing his apprenticeship. Revere now had to be the family's main source of income and had to work hard to support them. Even though Revere had just lost his father, he couldn't stop working and grieve alongside his family. He had to have the courage to keep his family afloat during these tough times, and that was just the beginning of his courageous acts. 2 years after his father passed, he volunteered for the military. In 1774 and through the spring of 1775, he was employed by the Boston Committee of Correspondence and the Massachusetts Committee of Safety as an express rider. His job was to carry news, messages, and copies of resolutions to places as far away as New York and Philadelphia. On the night of April 18, 1775, was Revere's famous ride to Lexington to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock that the British troops were marching in. With the threat of the oncoming troops and plenty of courage, Revere and two other riders, William Dawes and Samuel Prescott, decided to ride on, even though they were facing arrest if they were caught, and maybe even worse. Soon after they left, warning Adams and Hancock, and were on their way to Concord, they were caught and arrested by a British patrol. Prescott and Dawes both escaped quickly, but Revere was held for quite a while. During that time, however, he didn't speak a word of what they were doing, and had to have a lot of courage to do so. This ride was what made him famous in American history, and for him to do this, he had to have a lot of courage. This ride was a dangerous and long route that put a lot of pressure on him to succeed and warn Adams and Hancock of the oncoming British troops. In spite of all this, Revere had the courage to keep on riding and make him a famous American. Now we come to Dred Scott, who was born a slave in Virginia around 1800. He traveled with his master Peter Blow from Virginia to Alabama, then to Missouri in 1830. 2 years after moving to St. Louis, Peter Blow died and Scott was purchased by Dr. John Emerson. Dr. Emerson brought Scott to Illinois, which was a free state during that time. After living there for about 2.5 years, Emerson moved to Wisconsin, another free territory, bringing Dred along with him. While living there, Dred married Harriet Robinson, a slave of the local justice of the peace. Having lived in both Illinois and Wisconsin, where slavery was illegal, Dred had a legal standing on which to fight for his freedom. Unfortunately, Dred didn't make his claim for freedom while living in the free states, but while living in slave states. After living in Wisconsin, Emerson moved to St. Louis and then to Louisiana, leaving Dred and his wife in Wisconsin. About a year later, Emerson called upon Dred and his wife to come to him, so they traveled all the way down the Mississippi River to meet him. Emerson died in 1843, and his wife hired Scott out to an army captain. This was when Scott finally decided to fight for his freedom. After trying to buy his freedom from Mrs. Emerson with $300 and being refused, Scott decided to take legal action. This is a very courageous act since this was during a time of very intense racism, and being a black man, his actions wouldn't really be accepted. He took the chance, however, and fought for his freedom. He went to trial in June of 1847, but lost because of a technicality. He needed proof that he was owned by Dr. Emerson's widow. There was a retrial in 1850 in which the St. Louis court ruled Scott and his family to be free, but this was a short-lived victory, however, as the Missouri Supreme Court stepped in, reversing the decision. Scott then went to the Supreme Court, which took a lot of courage as he already lost his case once. The justices were all biased when it came to slavery. 7 of them were appointed by pro-slavery presidents, and 5 of them owned slaves themselves. Dred and his lawyer fought long and hard against John Sanford, Dr. Emerson's brother, to try to get Dred's freedom. Unfortunately, the decision was that since Scott was a black man, he had no right to sue and wasn't a citizen of the United States. The decision also deemed the Missouri Compromise of 1820 unconstitutional. Even though Dred lost his case, it made an impact on American history, and it took a whole lot of courage for him to go through with his court cases in such a racist time. Next we have Arthur Radley, or more commonly called Boo Radley, from To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. As a young boy, Boo Radley got involved with the wrong type of people, being in a gang and causing mischief. As a result, his father locked him in the house and has never left the house since. The only times he has left are to sneak out and put little trinkets in the knothole in the tree for Jem and Scout. Boo is afraid to come out of the house. He's been shut away and sheltered for all his life and doesn't know how to act in society. One day changes this, however, and Boo has the courage to face his fears. When Jem and Scout were attacked by Bob Ewell on their way home from the Halloween performance at their school, Boo Radley saved them. Jem and Scout are special to him, as he's watched them grow up and doesn't want anything bad to happen to them. Boo had the courage to go out of the house and kill Bob Ewell with a kitchen knife to save the kids. It was amazing how he was able to put aside all his fears and save the two kids from Bob Ewell, which shows that Boo is a very courageous character. Finally, we have Antonia Shimerda from My Antonia by Willa Cather. Antonia and her family just moved to America from Bohemia in the beginning of the book. It was very hard on her and her family, as they were very poor and had to start their new life in America. They didn't know how to farm or to run a homestead and were taken advantage of by Cusack, the town moneylender. Antonia always looked on the bright side, learning English from Jim and trying to make the most of her new life. It was during the winter when Antonia had to start being courageous. During the winter, her father committed suicide and shot himself in the head. Her brother Ambrose was now the head of the house and needed help with the farm. Even though she was a girl, Antonia had the courage to go out and work long, hard hours plowing the fields and doing whatever was needed to be done on the farm. She embraced this newfound courage and took on opportunities with gusto, moving to town and working there. Later in the book, we find her facing a very difficult situation. Her fiancé had left her, and now she's a single mother of a baby girl. Antonia had to stay strong, however, as she couldn't give up now that she had a young child. She had a lot of courage and was even proud that she had a daughter, getting her picture taken by the town photographer and framing it very nicely. It would be very difficult for her to find a husband now that she had a child, but that didn't bother her. She had the courage and strength to keep on living her life to the fullest, and in the end, it worked out well for her. At the end of the book, she got married and had tons of children, just as she always wanted, and lived on a huge farm. Without courage, Antonia's life wouldn't have gotten to be as great as it is. Having courage shapes our lives and who we are, making us American.